Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen and this is my wedding recap video. So in this video I'm going to be talking about some of my best decisions, some of my biggest regrets, the costs of things, and generally going over all my wedding stuff that hopefully will be helpful for anyone else who's planning a wedding. But jumping right in, because there's so much to a wedding that like literally I could talk about it probably for hours, but I'm gonna try to keep it to no more than like 30 minutes of just talking raw footage, so hopefully you're looking down at the timestamp and it's reading less than 30 minutes. But jumping right into like the first thing that I feel like you have to plan for a wedding, which is actually 3 interconnected things. And for me, that was venue/location, season, and color scheme. Obviously, you can't really book any of your other vendors until you book a venue, which by extension also then is your location. Now, for some people, this is going to be a little bit different than it was for us. My husband's family is from North Dakota, my family is from Nebraska, and me and my husband now live in a totally different state. So our first choice was, did we want to have the wedding in our state, in Nebraska, in North Dakota, or meet in the middle and have it in South Dakota, which also got a little bit tied up in our color and our season. For example, if we had done it in Nebraska, one of my top venue choices would have been the Rose Theater in Omaha. I went to classes there a lot as a kid, and for many years it was like a potential dream venue for me. My like dream wedding in my early teen years was very classic, very romantic but sophisticated. I wanted it to be red and white and black, and I wanted the flowers to be roses and potentially do it at the Rose Theater. So like obviously if we had picked that venue, it was also going to be selecting our color scheme. And color schemes also can kind of inform season. For example, my husband's favorite color is orange, so that was always on the table as a color option for our wedding, and obviously that lends itself most strongly to a fall wedding. Another thing to think about for season is weather. Winter might be a very pretty time to get married, potential for very pretty pictures in the snow, but do you want to have your anniversary in the cold months? My birthday is already in February, so I knew that, like, for example, if I had gone with the red wedding, even though that would have been gorgeous in the winter, I don't want my anniversary in the winter when my birthday is already in the winter, because I hate cold. So don't just think about how it's going to go on the wedding day, also think about the future. And orange for me kind of inspired this idea of doing like a very subtle Peter Pan theme in my wedding, because I love Peter Pan. So yeah, not everyone is going to have this big selection of locations. A lot of people are still living in the place where they were born, and that is also where their spouse is from, and that's where all their family is from, and so they have their weddings where they're from, and that makes sense. But for us, we've really truly had these many location options to choose from. And in the end, we did go with South Dakota because we did feel like it was a nice in-between point for the 2 families. We did it in Deadwood, which is kind of a touristy town that his family goes to all the time for like little family weekend trips. And so we did in fact go with the orange option and the fall option. This was in part helped by my timeline that I had in mind. I really didn't want to wait until 2023 to do the wedding. We got engaged on New Year's Eve, and I wanted to get married that year. But for summer, it would have been too soon for me. I didn't want to have such a short engagement and have that pressure of planning a wedding so quickly. But I also didn't want to wait a year and a half in order to get to the next summer. As a kid, I always imagined getting married in June because of the movie Bride Wars, and because June has just kind of always been my favorite month. But again, based on our timelines, I was willing to set that aside and do the fall wedding. So yeah, these 3 things just become very like interconnected, and like we almost had like 4 different, really mostly 2 different, but I had some other color schemes in mind, but we had like different options of like, if we do it here, we'll do it in the fall with this color scheme, and if we do it here, we'll do it the following summer with this color scheme. So it's just all about making those things cohesive and then and matching them together and then like picking the one that you want. And I do recommend giving yourself plenty of time. Obviously you can plan a wedding in like 4 months or whatever. A lot of people here on YouTube do that, but a lot of places book up early, and so if you want to give yourself the most options for your other vendors as possible, I personally recommend giving yourself like at least 9 months to plan. So I recommend booking a venue like 9 months to a year out or more if you want to have a certain season and you're really set on it, and you know, you're in the beginning of winter but you want to have summer, but you still want to have plenty of time to plan. But moving on from those kind of 3 very initial building blocks of wedding planning to the dress, which I don't really have so much advice here. Again, dresses do take a while, especially if you're getting bigger alterations. I purchased not like a spaghetti strap wedding dress, but like a strap wedding dress, but I wanted long sleeves, so I had to order the sleeves separately. So for me, my dress actually was on the sale rack, so I bought it right off of the rack, so I had it right away. But a lot of dresses you order and you have to wait for them. And then if you're ordering something separately, like I was with the sleeves, you're waiting even longer. I bought my dress and ordered my sleeves in February, and the sleeves did not come in until June. And then of course after that, I had to take it to be altered to have the sleeves actually sewn onto the dress and also get it fitted, which also can take a while. So again, all the advice throughout this is just going to be try to do everything as early as possible. But I also in this little section of the video wanted to share some of the pictures. I have already shown some pictures of my dress on my channel. I did a video that was like a wedding photo book tag video in which there were some pictures of my dress, but I haven't really talked about the shopping process at all before, so I figured I'd pop up pictures of all of the dresses that I tried. The first dress that I tried I really loved, but I had not yet told the owner of the bridal store my budget. So this dress was not in my budget, it was too expensive. So that's a nice tip. Don't forget to share your budget before you start trying on dresses. It wasn't that big a deal because I really did legitimately end up loving my dress more than the first one I tried on. But the first one I tried on was like my second place dress. It was my second favorite of all the ones I tried on. So it would have been kind of sad if I had really, really fallen in love with it and it was too expensive. I tried on a total of 8 dresses. My dress was the 6th dress that I tried on, and all I can say is that before I even got zipped in, when I was just holding it up, waiting for the sales lady to zip it up for me, I just already knew. It was just, I knew. It was the only dress that made me almost start crying. But I had already had more picked out after that one, so I went ahead and tried them on anyways. But yeah, they just were like, okay, I'm done with trying these other dresses on, put me back in my dress. Which, very fun. My maid of honor is actually the one who picked out my dress. She picked it out for me to try on, and it was the one I picked. So that's cute. Okay, apologies for the slight angle change. I realized that I didn't have it framed very well, but I also wasn't gonna reshoot what I had already shot. So then the second dress I really liked, but I can't think of the word for it. The like, not pattern, kind of the pattern, but it was almost like a raised pattern, I guess. I didn't love it. It was a little bit much for me. I loved the shape of the dress. I loved like the cutouts that you can kind of see on the side. But as much as I love those, I also felt like they wouldn't go really well with sleeves, and I did want to attach sleeves, which for me, the sleeves thing was not about like being modest or anything like that. That's fine if you want sleeves for that reason. But the reason I wanted sleeves is because I am always cold and I did not want to be cold or uncomfortable on my wedding day. So that is something I recommend thinking about, not just your aesthetics and how covered up or not covered up or anything else you want to be, but just to also think about like your comfort on the day. You want a dress that's gonna be comfortable and is gonna be like a good temperature or whatever. So I'm literally always cold no matter what, so I wanted sleeves. Even though they're like thin, see-through nothing sleeves, it still was just that idea of just having fabric on my skin rather than just being bare and cold. But you do also obviously want to think about like your aesthetic and like what you're gonna like 10 years down the road, blah, 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 all that stuff. So anyways, this dress was close, but not quite it. And then the third dress was just too beachy for me. I don't personally like this very loose, beachy fabric that was like on the bottom. It's personally my like least favorite kind of fabric for a dress. I like a big ballroomy, more type of a dress. My dress is kind of more A-line than ballroom, but whatever. I like it big. So then moving on to the fourth dress, has that dramatic shape that I love. The back was absolutely stunning. Maybe still my favorite back for all the dresses that I tried on. But again, the front looked ever so slightly beachy again, which is not my vibe. And like, I didn't love the belt situation that was going on. Again, the lace was just a little bit dramatic for me. I do actually think these are my sleeves that I ended up ordering for my dress to put on my dress. But yeah, so this one, again, very close, but not quite. So then moving on to the fifth dress, which I really loved the like very delicate material that was right here, but we were a little bit worried because the woman who owned the shop, not an alterations person, and so she didn't know for sure any dresses which would work or wouldn't work to attach sleeves to, but this one she said since it was a spaghetti strap might not work for attaching sleeves. And so that right there made me think, nope, don't want to risk it. And then obviously, as I've said, the sixth dress was the dress. So moving right along to the seventh dress that I tried, which again, I loved this one. I really love, so the thing that adds the like body to this one that you can see like on the sides around the hips is horsehair. So I loved the horsehair trim on the skirt, but I kind of wished there had been more. Like I wanted more in the front rather than just on the sides. I think this one might have had that same cutout situation that I wasn't so sure would work well with sleeves. And yeah, again, I was just obsessed with my dress at this point. So as much as I liked elements of this one, it just wasn't quite all the way there for me, though I did love how big it was. And then the final dress I tried on was my least favorite dress. I didn't like the lace. I felt like the lace was way too big. I didn't like the off the shoulder element. I definitely not only wanted sleeves, but also wanted straps, something to hold the dress up. I wore a strapless dress as a bridesmaid once, and it was very uncomfortable. I was pulling the dress up all night long, and I hated it, and ever since then, I knew that I at least wanted a strap of some sort on my wedding dress. So this, even though it had sleeves that were actually attached, wouldn't have needed alterations, I did not like the off-the-shoulder element. So anyways, yeah, that was the whole process of shopping for my dress. Not a lot of advice there necessarily, but very fun to talk about and reminisce on. So, bridesmaids dresses and tuxes. These were extremely hard for us to find because we picked not super popular colors. Orange for the bridesmaids dresses was hard to find, and brown for the tuxes was even more hard. We ended up having to go online for both of them. For the bridesmaids, I did actually do like a shopping weekend with them, and we went to 3 different bridal stores, David's Bridal and then 2 more boutique-y places, and just none of them had dresses that all of the girls liked in orange. I did the thing where I just let the girls pick whatever dresses they want as long as it was the right color. I did want my maid of honor to be in one shade of orange and the other 2 to be in a different shade of orange, but I wasn't like super picky on those shades. But yeah, just nowhere had a lot of selection for orange dresses. So we failed to find them on that shopping weekend, and I ended up using a Zazie, which worked out beautifully. I loved it. All my girls were able to pick dresses that they felt comfortable in, and my maid of honor was able to be in a light sunsetty orange, and the other 2 were in a little bit darker of an orange, which was beautiful. So I highly recommend a Zazie for bridesmaids dresses. It's super easy to use. There's a lot of selection. It's awesome. And then you know that everyone's coordinated. Tuxes were even more hard. Finding brown tuxes is nearly impossible. We started by looking at Men's Warehouse, and just a fair warning, if you're shopping at Men's Warehouse for your tuxes, literally your options are gray, blue, and black. So that was not for us. We ended up getting our tuxes from Generation Tux, which was a rental tux site that worked out so well. Again, very easy process. You get them in the mail, you send them back after. It's great. One thing I will note on this topic is really think about your color scheme. When I was first starting planning, I was just like, oh, it's just orange. We're just doing orange, brown tuxes, because obviously orange tuxes would be crazy. Brown tuxes with orange ties and orange for the bridesmaids. But I kind of forgot to think about what color everyone else would be wearing. And so when it came time to like start looking for dress options for my mom, obviously we don't want parents to be in the wedding color, but we want them to be in something that's gonna look nice with the wedding color. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll put them in yellow, and this I kind of took from Harry Potter, but yellow at a wedding is like good luck or whatever. And so I was like, that'll be fun. That's, you know, good luck for the wedding, and yellow will look nice with orange. And my mom was not really super on board with yellow. She didn't think she'd look nice in yellow. She's a little bit picky about what colors she wears. But this actually turned out to be a great thing because she made me think more about like what colors everyone would be wearing. I just wasn't putting much thought into it, weirdly. And so this deeper thinking led to more of like a color palette that was way more cohesive and better than what it would have been, I think. So what we ended up doing was we had our flower girl and our ring bearer in yellow. They were our little drops of sunshine. And then the bridesmaids were orange, of course. The tuxes were brown with orange ties, and then for the parents, we put them in burgundy. So it led to a bigger, but also like more cohesive, nicer color palette. So don't forget to think not only what color are your bridesmaids gonna wear, but also what are the parents gonna wear. And a lot of times flower girl and ring bearer are in the same color as the wedding party, which is fine. Or sometimes the flower girl will be white with just a sash that matches the wedding party. Our flower girl, we just did a full yellow dress, and that was just very specific to the flower girl and the ring bearer. Oh, and also don't forget, as I was just about to, ushers. Do you want ushers to match the wedding party? Parents have their own color, match the flower girl and the ring bearer. There are a lot of options. I don't know what's the most traditional. I feel like ushers and like brides have attendants that forms its own color group a lot of the time. But what we did, since we didn't have bridal attendants, was we put the ushers in the same color as the flower girl and the ring bearer. And we also only had one usher. Originally we had two, but one couldn't do it. So we just had the one usher anyways. And he was our ring bearer's dad, so it also just kind of made sense for him to match the ring bearer. But now moving on to flowers. Although I didn't really do a lot of flower research, I just knew that I wanted fake flowers from the very beginning, no questions asked. It was just not even a thought in my head to want to go through the process of real flowers. I didn't want to have to deal with coordinating having them delivered at a certain place on a certain day. I didn't want to deal with preserving them. I wanted to like definitely keep my flowers and have them looking exactly like they did on the day of the wedding for the rest of time. And yeah, honestly, just did not even for a single second ever consider doing real flowers, especially because we were doing like a destination wedding, which I suppose is not that different for the flower situation to if you're not having a destination wedding, you're still just having a flower company deliver them at a certain time at a certain place, but still. And in fact, by doing fake flowers, I had to transport them myself. But I don't know, I just personally think real flowers seem to me like they would be a lot more work through the entire process all the way until after the wedding. I feel like my flowers looked beautiful, in my personal opinion. Honestly, you cannot tell unless you get really, really close to them that they are fake. Even in our photos, there's like maybe one or two like really, really close-up photos with our rings where you can tell that they're fake. But overall, you have to look pretty closely to know that they're fake flowers. Now, our flowers were expensive. I don't know how they compare to real flowers, considering I didn't do any research for real flowers. I got my flowers through Budget Bride, budget-bride.com, and they were amazing, but very expensive. They would have been much less expensive, except we did make a change in decision partway through the process. So, on Budget Bride, I ordered like a small bridesmaid bouquet in order to see what it looked like, what size it was, if I thought they looked nice or if they looked cheesy and super fake. Which I will note, if you do go through Budget Bride, they have like a sample kit that you can order, which was still kind of pricey and came with like a lot of different things. And so I was like, I really just need one little bouquet just to see if they look nice. So I did that, not knowing that that then puts your order into like the list with all of the other full orders of brides ordering every flower they're gonna have at their wedding. Whereas if you order the kit thing, they like prioritize that and send it to you faster. So when I got the one little bouquet many weeks, maybe months after I ordered it, I was very worried that they wouldn't be able to get all my flowers to me on time. And I actually messaged them. I was like, I really love this little bouquet, but I'm worried about getting all my flowers on time. And they're like, oh, well, you should have ordered the kit because it goes a lot faster. But yes, we can get your flowers to you on time. So that's just a little story, little anecdote to keep in mind if you do order from Budget Bride. But anyways, so I got this little bouquet and it was beautiful, and I definitely wanted to use Budget Bride. Not only because it was beautiful, but also because they were literally the only place where I could find tiger lilies. And when we decided to go with the orange wedding, the only like orange thing that I really cared about was the tiger lilies. I wanted the tiger lilies because we were going with orange. This was the only place where I could find tiger lilies. But we got this little bridesmaid bouquet, and originally I had been planning, while I cared very much about having tiger lilies, I didn't really care about the size of my bouquets. And so in order to like save some money, I was like, well, I'll just get myself the maid of honor bouquet. I'll get my maid of honor the large bridesmaid bouquets, and the other bridesmaids can just have like the medium-sized bridesmaids bouquets, and that's fine. We don't need these giant bouquets. The bridal bouquet itself was $250. So I was like, we're gonna save money and get all sized down. But then we got the small bridesmaids bouquet, and it was tiny, like really tiny. And I was like, oh, this is even smaller than I expected. And so my husband actually was the one that was like, we should size everything up one. We want to make sure that it's what we actually want. It'll cost a lot more, but we should do it. So originally my flower budget, when we were going to do all the smaller sizes, was going to be around $500. Once we sized everything up one, it ended up being $1,000. Again, I don't really know how that compares to real flowers, but that's how much it costs for us to do 3 bridesmaids bouquets, a bridal bouquet, boutonnieres, corsages, etc. Toss petals, 50 loose stems for random decorations, etc. Now, one thing I will note, I'm very glad that I upgraded to the bridal bouquet. It was big and gorgeous and beautiful and awesome. But the different sizes for the bridesmaids bouquets, the large bridesmaid, or no, the maid of honor bouquet, the large bridesmaid bouquet, the medium, then the small, not a big difference between any of those sizes. So while I would recommend doing the bridal bouquet, even though it's a lot of money, I don't recommend doing a bigger bouquet for your maid of honor. Just do all mediums. It's fine. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, do what you want, but that's what I would recommend. So now moving on to our other vendors, which actually I'm gonna circle back to venue for a moment, actually really location. As you may remember me mentioning, we decided to get married in Deadwood, South Dakota, which is a very small kind of touristy sort of town. It's like it's Old West sort of town. And so my note, if you're like choosing between locations and one of your location options is a much smaller town, whether that's where you live or you're traveling somewhere touristy. If it's a small town like that, one thing you should keep in mind is you might not have a lot of vendor options, and your vendors might have to travel to get to where you are at. That is what happened with us. Most of our vendors were not actually in Deadwood, and we had to pay travel fees. They weren't like a ton of money, but it's just something to keep in mind. Our photographer and my hair and makeup person both traveled an hour to get to our wedding, and our DJ actually traveled 4 hours. Another thing to keep in mind, check locations, double check locations, and confirm locations with the vendor before booking. We did not realize our DJ was 4 hours away until a couple weeks after we booked them. It ended up still, like, in the grand scheme of things, compared to all the other costs, not being that much money for them to travel 4 hours, but it was definitely a very stressful, scary realization when we realized it. So yeah, just triple check locations of your vendors. But yeah, starting with our venue, we did a casino hotel, one of our best decisions, because we were able to have, they had like one giant ballroom that they could like divide into 4, and we booked up 2 sections of the ballroom, one for the ceremony, one for the reception. So ceremony, walk down the hall, reception. So easy, so convenient, so wonderful. Some people probably like traveling from their venue to their reception. It's a time where you can party with your wedding party or have some alone time with your groom between the 2 events. I personally, in my mind, I was like, this would just add stress for me. So I very much was on board with having both things in one location. It made scheduling the day easier. The day, I feel like, I mean, we still scheduled in time between the ceremony and the reception to like do pictures and stuff, which like, so our pictures were just like outside in the woods on a hill. That sounds weird. In the woods on a hill, like outside of the venue before the reception, which other people might use that time to like go to an arcade bar or something. I went to 2 weddings this year that's what they did between the 2, so that's why it's my example, which is super fun. It's very fun pictures, but I don't know, just for me, it just was not something I personally was interested in. So that's something to kind of think about, like, what's your style? Like, do you want to have a party between the parties? Or do you want the ease of having it all in one spot? What's your vibe? But anyways, moving on from the venue to hair and makeup, which again, confirm locations. I went to my hair and makeup trial a month before the wedding. We went up to Deadwood to visit all the vendors and things. Went up for the trial. She had moved locations. Google was still showing her old location, which luckily was only a block away, so it wasn't that big a deal. But still, save yourself the stress and text your hair and makeup person first and be like, are you still located at this place that Google is telling me you are at? And then again, with hair and makeup, I just recommend comfort. If you love having your hair down, wear your hair down. I love having my hair down, and I wore it up for the wedding, which sounds backwards, and also I'm always cold, so having hair down to keep me warm maybe would have made more sense. But I put my hair in like a low bun, and it was just out of my face all day, and it's so, they can do it so securely, and it was, I loved it. But since I did want it to be down but still like a nice full enough bun, I like, as soon as I got engaged, stopped cutting the hair and only got trims so that I could grow it out so that there would be enough hair there to work with. So maybe think about that far in advance of your wedding. Do you want longer hair to do some sort of complicated hairstyle? Or do you want something short because you think that's cute or whatever? Just plan ahead if you're wanting to grow out your hair. And then makeup. In the hair and makeup trial, if you've never done lashes and they ask you if you want to do lashes, I recommend trying them. That way, if you do a trial, I guess. Not everyone does a trial, but if you do a trial, try the lashes if you've never done lashes before. That way you know what they feel like and you know whether or not you're gonna want to do them on the day. Don't think, oh, I've never tried them before, it's scary, I'm just not gonna do it at all. I mean, you can do that, but like the whole point of a trial is to try makeup that you haven't necessarily tried before to see how it will work on the wedding day. And obviously to see if you like how it looks. I am running way over on time already. Photos. My advice, push yourself to think of as many photos as you possibly can that you want to capture. I made a shot list. I didn't have a ton on it, I did get some very important shots to me. For example, I had some blue hair clips made out of my mom's wedding dress for my something blue. And so like I put that on my shot list that like I want to get a close-up of these hair clips. I want to get some photos of my mom pretending to put them in my head, because obviously the hair lady did that. But yeah, so like I made like a shot list of things that I wanted, but still after the wedding, I was like, oh, we didn't get a ton of these photos. And the photo that I'm thinking of is a lot of like formal photos showing the back of my dress, because I am a sucker for a beautiful back of the dress, and I loved the back of my dress. And we don't really have a lot, if any, formal photos really showing off the back of my dress. Like there are some incidental back of the dress shots, like my mom buttoning the dress obviously is showing the back of the dress, or there are some shots dancing that show the back of the dress, or cutting the cake that show the back of the dress. But I don't know, I just feel like there could have been some more formals, like just of me like really showing off the back. So yes, just really stretch yourself to brainstorm as many shots as you possibly can. Obviously you don't have all the time in the world to just endlessly take formal photos, but really think on it. So moving on to our DJ, the person who was 4 hours away. With music, that was something that I didn't really care much about at the wedding. I'm not a big dancer. I ended up enjoying dancing at my wedding way more than I thought I would, but I didn't really care much. Honestly, at various points I was like, I can just hook up an iPod and announce songs myself, and then I can give the backstory for why I picked these songs, and that'll be really cool. That's not what we ended up doing, but it was a thought in my head. So we did actually end up paying a shit ton for the DJ, because DJs are expensive. And obviously with this, like, it's come up with a priority list yourself before you get married. Everything is expensive, but come up with a priority list. If photography is what's important to you, pay for a photographer and a videographer and just do it. But if music's what's important, then maybe just do a photographer, but do live music. Whatever is your priority. For me, music was not a priority, but we did end up going with a very expensive DJ. Not because the DJ was very high on our priority list, but because we wanted to streamline the process always. That was always what we were trying to do. Our venue provided our reception and our ceremony location and our food and drinks, because they also were the caterers because it was a hotel. And like our rehearsal dinner the restaurant also had a bakery, so they also made our cake, and we just combined as many things as we possibly could. So the DJ was one of those cases where at first we were gonna have a family member be our officiant, but that fell through, and like we didn't really personally want like a religious affiliated officiant, because that's just not who we are. And so I found out that a lot of DJs offer officiating, and that's when I finally solidly was like, yes, I will pay for a DJ, that way they can also officiate, and that's 2 birds with 1 stone. Thank you. So hot tip, DJs officiate. And that was one of our best decisions. Our DJ was so awesome, and he did the ceremony so well. So going back to the rehearsal dinner bakery situation, my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, picked out our rehearsal dinner. They're very familiar with the town, and so they knew the good restaurants. I trusted them with that task. And yeah, they picked a restaurant that also had a bakery in it. And so we were all over that. We were like, yes, they can do our rehearsal dinner and our cake, and that'll be awesome. And it was. Getting one vendor to do multiple things is awesome. And for the cake, our whole concept here was I wanted a very traditional bridal cake, a white bridal cake with our wedding flowers climbing up the cake. Pretty traditional. And that's tiger lilies, of course. So that's the cake with the tiger lilies. And then for the toppers, we wanted very personalized. And so our topper is actually a silhouette of me and my husband sitting back to back. He's holding a video game controller, I'm reading a book, because those are our things that we like to do. And so this is like an actual photo of us that we made into a silhouette. And then groom's cakes are also popular. I feel like they became popular right about the time that my older brother got married. So I've always just imagined doing a groom's cake. I think it's a fairly new concept. Like, I think it just came around back when my brother got married, which was, I don't know, maybe a decade ago. But anyway, so I told my husband, you can do a groom's cake, go wild, have what you want. I think nowadays it's actually getting more popular to do like a small bridal cake and then other dessert things that aren't cake. But whatever, we stuck with that middle 10 years ago popular thing. You know, something that's not just a bridal cake, but also not getting creative and doing like danishes. Someone did that recently. I went to a wedding this summer that was danishes. That was awesome. But we just did a cake and a groom's cake, so my husband wanted to do cupcakes. So for the cupcakes, we just wanted them to be like little flowers that just had our wedding colors kind of swirled together. Burgundy and orange were two of our main colors. And for the toppers on this one, we did silhouettes of our cat, Harry Baby, which I loved and was so adorable. I did them using a Cricut machine. And our cake, I think, was a pretty average price. It was around $400. Honestly, I feel like a lot of wedding stuff, like obviously if you don't have the budget for it, you don't have the budget for it. But if you do, it can be very easy to just be like, yep, just however much it costs is how much it costs. And like, yeah, wedding cakes a lot of times are about that much. So that's how much it was. And it was the same with like the DJ. And a part of this might be, again, the fact that we didn't have a ton of vendor options since we were having it in a small town. So like the DJ, we looked at them all and they're like all the same price. And it's like, well, what are you gonna do? You're just gonna hire one unless you're gonna have an iPod wedding like I was thinking for a while. Sorry, I feel like this is all very disorganized. Hard to organize all this. Anyways, moving on. Back to venue, since I'm kind of talking about prices. Our venue was very cheap in the sense that a lot of venues I looked at, just like the rental fee for like the space was a ton of money, and then you're also paying for all the other things. So our rental space was only like $500, which compared to a lot of other places was very cheap, where they then charged not necessarily more than other places, but the thing that still made it very expensive was the food and drink. They had a minimum amount that you had to spend on that. So between the venue and like the food and drink, I think it was close to like $4,000, which again, like compared to some other venue options, for example, I looked at like a big fancy public library as one of our options. That one, the rental alone was $5,000. So again, I feel like if you can find places where you can combine things like the fact that our venue was our caterer, it can help both stress levels and price levels. And then one place where me and my husband at least did not spend any money was the paper products. Unfortunately, I have no advice on paper products because my husband's mother is a graphic designer and she did everything. She was a queen. They were beautiful. We didn't have to do any work. We didn't have to do any money. She just handled it all and it was great. This is the third video reset I'm doing because this is just so much to talk about. So long, so much longer than I wanted it to be. Apologies if you're not actually interested in watching a video for this long. Okay, gonna try to start wrapping it up here. Hopefully any of this has been helpful. On to the topic of a wedding planner. I did not have a wedding planner. A, because I didn't want to pay money for that. B, because I'm pretty organized myself and I've been looking forward to this literally my whole life. Considered becoming an event planner myself in college, mostly because I wanted to do weddings. Don't really like interacting with people anyways because I'm shy, so it was just one less vendor to have to worry about interacting with. I also did not do a day of planner. I also didn't designate a certain person to like run everything, just kind of tag teamed it between me, the moms, maid of honor, friend of the moms that was willing to volunteer to be one of the helper people, which I don't regret. I think most everything ran smoothly. It was fine. But one thing I recommend is checklists. More checklists than you could possibly even imagine. I am a checklist person, big checklist person, but there is one big thing on our wedding day that we missed out on doing that we had planned to do because we just simply forgot about it. And that was, I put in the time and effort before the wedding to put together a photo slideshow that we were just gonna have running silently on a screen during the entirety of the reception, just kind of on a repeat in the background. It didn't make any noise, it was just photos. that was, you know, just photos from like our entire lives. Like I opened it with the baby photo of my husband, then a baby photo of me, then like side-by-side photos from each of our parents' weddings, and then going through our whole lives up until that point. But we forgot to set it up in the reception room, which was kind of a complaint I had a little bit about my venue. So note, just because there's someone, if you book a hotel as like your venue, just because there is someone that is like the person that you are in contact with in order to set up your event, and they like have your order of like, here's the table linens you want, here's the food that you want the hotel to serve at the reception, here's the person doing all of that, doesn't mean that they are a day of make sure that everything that you want happens kind of a person. Our person wasn't even there that day. Was not working. So like obviously the people at the hotel, the people making the food, and the people who set up the tables with the linens, all of them knew the event was happening and did all the things they were supposed to do, but they didn't have like a step-by-step list of every single thing that we had in our minds. So even though we had paid to rent the projector, it wasn't their job to make sure it was set up. I feel like it kind of was. But anyways, it wasn't their job, and we did forget. So make a checklist for everything. I should have had a checklist with every single thing that needed to happen in that reception room, which I kind of did in the sense of I had previously like set up how I wanted each of our different types of tables to look at my house months before the wedding. Like I had a setup for like, I had a picture that was like, this is what the head table is gonna look like. This is what every guest table is gonna look like. This is what the gift table is going to look like. And I sent those pictures to everyone who was down in the reception room, all my family members who were setting it up for me. I sent them pictures like, here's all the pictures of what everything should look like. But obviously you don't have a picture of your projector slideshow because it's a projector slideshow. There's no, the flowers should be placed here and the lantern should be here with that situation. So that's how it got forgotten. So checklists, checklists if you don't hire a wedding planner. And even if you do hire a wedding planner, it doesn't hurt to have checklists. Another funny thing that would have been not ideal, kind of related to this, but not really, was, so at first, I'm going off on a totally random story that's not necessary, but it is, I don't know, maybe you can learn something from it. So at first, we had a single space rented for both the ceremony and the reception. So they were gonna happen in the same room. So glad we didn't do that. Do not recommend it. I don't think it would have been very nice. We ended up, instead of just having one section of the ballroom, we rented two. So ceremony was in this room, reception was in this room, meaning we were able to have a proper aisle instead of just our guest tables and stuff. Anyways, but that didn't happen until like literally a month before the wedding when we went up for that visit with our vendors. So because of that, I hadn't really been thinking of ceremony decoration because I was just doing reception decoration and that was where the ceremony was gonna be. So I literally would not have had any decorations in my ceremony room at all if it was not for my mother-in-law. She did all of that in the month before the wedding because by that point I had so much other stuff going on. The fact that I hadn't planned it because they were supposed to be in the same spot up until that point, just totally was not gonna do it. Anyways, that's a random story that's very specific to us. Moving on to after the wedding and my advice for after the wedding, what we're doing for after the wedding. You're probably thinking other than honeymoon, which just happens immediately after the wedding, what else is there? So in my year of following The Knot, Instagram, and having the app and all that, there are a lot of articles about post-wedding blues. Also, I recommend The Knot in your pre-wedding planning. Get the Knot app, use it, but also get a wedding planning notebook, use that. This is the wedding planner we used. It came from Barnes & Noble. But anyways, they talk about post-wedding blues. And this is when you get sad after the wedding because all of the exciting things are over, there's nothing to look forward to, and you've spent a year planning a wedding, which for me at least, I know was basically a full-time job outside of my job. Like I spent so many hours each week doing wedding planning in the entire 10 months that I was engaged. So if you get to after the wedding and you have nothing to do with all of this extra free time that you have now found, that could be boring and sad. So one thing that we're doing, first of all, we are doing a 1-year anniversary honeymoon. We did not go on a honeymoon after our wedding, partly because it was already kind of a destination wedding, so like we didn't want to travel twice in a row, partly to have time to save money. Weddings are expensive. And if you can have a year to recoup from that before then immediately paying for a honeymoon, that's great. And then also, we're both just kind of homebodies. We get tired very easily, and the idea of doing this whole big stressful wedding and then immediately traveling did not sound relaxing. Did not sound like a vacation. So we're doing a 1-year anniversary honeymoon. That's just like what works for us. It's just a little recommendation, a little like note that like you don't have to do the honeymoon right after the wedding. There are a lot of wedding things that are just kind of automatic because it's the way it's always been done, and sometimes it's nice to just stop and think like, wow, do I actually want to do this? Do I actually want to go doing the stress and money of traveling immediately after this wedding that I've just done? No, maybe I won't then. But if you do, that's cool too. So that's one thing. We still have our honeymoon to look forward to for a whole year. And then the other thing I recommend is if you're feeling like you're missing the wedding, if you're feeling like you still want to be in those vibes, you still want to have like all your wedding stuff surrounding you and you don't want to just put it all in a box and forget about it, then my recommendation is coming up with like wedding, post-wedding projects that you can kind of work on. This is, of course, decorating your house with wedding stuff. We made this P using some of our loose stems from Budget Bride that we have hanging on our wall. Here's a picture. This took, you know, a little while to make. It was a fun little project to do together. We work on scrapbooks. We made a Shutterfly picture book that we haven't ordered yet because it's gonna be so expensive. We found places to hang pictures and dot around different wedding memorabilia. For our Unity ceremony, we did a time capsule. So we're gonna be able to open that on our 1st anniversary and our 5th anniversary and our 10th anniversary and our 20th anniversary, because there are boxes within boxes. So that's my thing, is like, I love weddings so much that I never want to feel like my wedding is in the past. I want it to feel very present and very like a part of my life, and like all of the decisions that I made in regards to the wedding are like carrying forward, of like keeping my flowers to be able to look at and be like, oh yes, my wedding aesthetic, there it is. So yeah, I feel like this might feel obvious, but just having a lot of keepsakes from your wedding and like putting in that thought beforehand of being like, what can I physically have after my wedding that's not just memories? It's kind of like why the photography component was the most important component for us, because like my husband was like, the only thing we're gonna have after the wedding is the photos, which is not true, because again, like I go crazy with coming up with artsy crafty projects to make out of all the wedding shit, but you get the idea. And just having all of this stuff and all of these like wedding related things to look forward to and to still do and interact with also just kind of helps with the feelings of, wow, weddings are so expensive and they're only one day. Like that's a very common thing that people say. They're like, oh, the wedding's only one day and you're gonna spend all this money. And it's like, but no, it's not just one day. A wedding isn't just a wedding, it's a marriage, and you can make the choice to incorporate it into your like life at large and not have it just be that one day. So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't know, I feel like this was a very rambly. I hope this is how wedding videos recap things are supposed to be done. I watched some others to try to get some inspo, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some sort of advice out of this, or some thoughts on your own wedding planning or post-wedding planning. Oh, I didn't even talk about the ceremony at all. Okay, so for our ceremony, this is another thing. Again, just do you for the ceremony. If you want a very religious, very traditional ceremony and to just do what you're supposed to do for whatever you happen to be, do that. Stick to your, I'm making this sound very judgy. Do what's important to you. Like if it's very important to you to do like the traditions that you've grown up with and all that. Do that. Do it. But if you did not grow up religious and you're going into your wedding thinking, wow, weddings are very religious. You have a priest marry you and you have them do this script that everyone knows and blah, 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 and you're thinking that's not really me and it doesn't really mean anything to me. Write your own ceremony script. Maybe you're not like a creative person and you don't know how to write your own ceremony script and that sounds very stressful for you and you'd rather do the traditional thing, not because it necessarily means so much, but because the idea of having something that you wrote doesn't give you the gigs, as it were. That's fine too. But like if you're feeling kind of uncomfortable with that, don't be afraid to be like, I'm gonna come up with my own shit. We came up with our own shit and we loved it. While we took traditional ceremony stuff as like a leaping off point, we then just went wild with it. So like, for example, many religious ceremonies have readings from the Bible. We did readings, but not from the Bible, which I think is a thing that people do now, but a lot of people, if they aren't very religious, just don't do readings. Like I know of one wedding a few years back where my parents went and it was like 5 minutes long and the wedding was over because it did strip out kind of all the religious stuff, but it didn't put anything in, and so it was just a very short ceremony, which I think was this person's kind of style. They just weren't really into standing around for a long ceremony anyways, so like that's cool for them. But like I still wanted to have like all the words and all the stuff because I love words. And so I was like, I still want to have readings, I just don't want them to be from the Bible. So like I picked a poem by Emily Dickinson and a poem by J.R.R. Tolkien because I love Tolkien even though I haven't read any of it, but I love the movies. And I did like a reading that was like a mashed together bunch of different quotes from J.M. Barrie because again we had a subtle Peter Pan theme. So like we did all the readings, and then another thing that's becoming popular I feel like is to not do the traditional in sickness and in health vows, and some people just write personal statements instead, which I liked the idea of doing personal statements, and so we did those. I kind of had to, my husband didn't love having to write that for himself, but he did a very good job, so I was right. But anyway, so we did personal statements, but I still wanted vows. I just didn't want the vows that everyone has done since the beginning of weddings. And so like I sought out like stuff that felt right to us for our vows. And then like the unity ceremony was something we really struggled with because we didn't really care about doing candles. We definitely did not want to do sand. None of it excited us. We just didn't care about any of the options we were seeing. And I don't remember exactly how the time capsule idea came about, but once it did, we both knew. We were like, oh yes, this is something that like we actually will look forward to, and it's something that we can interact with in the future, and it's not just something that's gonna sit on a shelf. And so yeah, so we did the time capsule ceremony, which also for us felt new and fresh and exciting, and you know, still was using the idea of the unity ceremony, which is a very old idea, but updating it and making it something that we really cared about. And then it's the same with the music again. I know I said I didn't care about music, but that was in regards to the reception. For the ceremony and for like the like specific songs like first dance and stuff, don't be afraid to branch out. Like I feel like a lot of ceremony music is very like instrumental violins and harps and stuff, and if you like that aesthetic, go for it. But also like we had our wedding party walk down to a cover of What Dreams Are Made Of by Hilary Duff from the Lizzie McGuire movie because it was a beautiful song. So you do you, and try not to worry about what anyone in the audience might think. Another thing is wedding size. I think a lot of people feel like they have to invite everyone to their wedding. I feel like people feel like there are two options: either elope and have no one, or have everyone. As hard as it can be, if you want an in-between, I encourage you to do an in-between. People will get over it. Me and my husband, again, shy, introverted homebodies, get overwhelmed easily, did not want a a huge, huge guest list. Also, my family is just astronomically huger than his family. He has a very small family compared to me. So we just didn't want his side to just be overwhelmed by this huge amount of people. And so like, I had like a cutoff point of like, I'm inviting these relatives, aunts, uncles, grandparents, and parents, but I'm not inviting cousins because that would have doubled the size of our guest list all by itself. And it can be very hard to make those decisions, but in the end, you gotta do what's gonna work for you and what's gonna make your day your day. Honestly, if I could have gone even smaller, I maybe would have. I ended up liking dancing much more at my wedding than I thought I would. I loved being in my dress, moving around, feeling like I was getting full use out of it. Whenever I was sitting, I was like, I don't want to be sitting, I want to be using this dress that I'm wearing that I love. But years ago, my maid of honor's aunt got married and had like a very small wedding, like less than 20 people. And so they didn't do dancing at their reception at all. They did board games and they did like getting to know each other type icebreaker games. And the way my maid of honor described it, I just always was like, oh, I would love that. Like a really intimate reception where every single person actually talks to every other single person and actually like gets to know each other a little. We still ended up having too many people for that because you have to have like a really small wedding for that. But like, if that's what you want, make it happen. Like I said, this doesn't fall under wedding regrets for me because I ended up loving the dancing. But just another thing to be like, make it yours, make it yours, make it yours. So anyways, now I think that's everything. I think I've talked about everything now. If you have additional like questions, if this has made you curious or whatever, I don't know, ask questions in the comments. Thank you if you watched this very rambling video. I hope you enjoyed, hope you got some use out of it. Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.